inspired by those guys at the time. Yeah, holy smoke and good grief. And what great times they were. I was telling Lee about the about the deluxe martini picture. I was talking to Chris Fonte the other day about that too. And I wish we could find a
I wish you would.
Great picture of that. I need to have that in my album. I know you're the only one that has a copy of it, I think.
It's a question in the chat room.
Sabatino's. Be back in Sabatino's. Well, yeah. You know.
I didn't hear the last part of his conversation.
Spent a lot of time in Sabatino's after jobs. Sabatino's salad.
What?
What?
We didn't hear any of his conversation.
You don't hear any of the questions?
We lost him.
All right, we're feeding back. You have to hang up your phone or mute your phone. This. Ah, now
better.
we can hear
Oh, Bev's
what we're talking. It's all
Bev.
our. No, I'm not going to say that.
Who's the producer of the
This is
show?
going swimmingly.
This is going swimmingly.
Russ is the producer tonight.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So.
So Coyote.
Coyote was.
Coyote's the producer.
Coyote
No.
was a great band.
No, Tim brought up some fond memories.
Oh yeah.
That were.
I had forgotten that whole period of time that we spent. This is a great story, and means we have time and no music. I'll relay it. We had a friend that lived in the neighborhood who was a drummer, and he had moved down to Virginia Beach. He moved down to Norfolk because he had a girlfriend down there. And he calls Timmy and I up one January. It's snowing like it's crazy here. He said, "You guys got to get down here because there's plenty of work, and we'll put a band together." He said, "I got a place for us to live. I got food. I got this and that." So Timmy and I, on a whim, loaded our psychedelic painted truck
Right.
with everything we owned, and we headed off to Virginia Beach. Now, little did we know that halfway there, and he'll remember this if he's still listening. In Rich, we didn't know how to get there. In '95, at that time, only went in and out. You know, so you were on 301 a lot. So we went through the city of Richmond, and the truck broke down.
Yeah.
And the guy that came and gave us a jump was a guy named James Brown. And he swore that he was the James Brown. Did the screaming, did the dancing, and we're in the middle of the street, you know, and now we're in Richmond. It's raining instead of snowing. But anyway, we get through that, and we get down to meet our friend Gus Correa in Norfolk. And we have no money. I think we left the house with $5. We were bumming money for gas all the way down. And we get there, and we say, "Gus, this is great, man. Where's the place we're living?" So he takes us to this house, and he's living with like 7 guys in the Navy that are renting this house. And we open the cupboards to get something to eat, and it's all sea rations. So now we're there in Norfolk for 3 weeks. The truck had broken down on this parking lot of this club that we were supposed to be playing. It may still be there 40 years later because we had to leave it there. So anyway, we couldn't work there. We were starving to death. We were literally starving. And we said, we're going to go to Virginia Beach. That's where the action is. So Timmy and I found a way to go to Virginia Beach, and we met some great friends along the way who we're still friends with after 40 years. The Moskowitz family, great people.
Very cool.
And he was a Navy guy. He took us both in down there, and I finally got my place. But we found a place to play down there. I know we were telling the story before. The band Holy Smoke played 7 days a week with a matinee on Sunday.
Wow.
$75 and 1 meal a day.
Well, and that's what gets you through.
And that was, I mean, for us, it was like a dream come true because we were able to work. We didn't make any money, but we made enough money to sustain and to come back and play the next day. We just both cut a lot of chops down there and learned how to play. I was still a bass player then. That was.
This was long before the Dion days.
This was long before the Dion days. This was in my musical infancy.
Okay.
Which was.
Well, let's fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, maybe get a little bit serious for a second. What was when the carousel stopped? How was that for you?
Very disheartening.
Yeah.
We came out of a huge mini tour of the Midwest with Dion, and our last stop was in Charleston, West Virginia, at the college.
Yeah.
And we played that gig to probably 3,000 people. And that gig.
And that's a problem?
Well, what had been happening over the last month or two, and we were doing 4 or 5 nights a week, traveling from city to city, and we had covered a lot of ground.
Right.
And Dion kept becoming, because we were so, and this is not disparaging to Dion at all, but we were writing and playing at a level that was way behind his grasp. you know, he kept reverting back to doing his old standbys. And we had 2 albums worth of stuff that was just
Well, I mean,
killer.
in his defense, it was good to him. You know?
Well, it was, that was his bread and butter.
Right.
But he was, you know, the record label wanted him to step out of that and become relevant in the late 70s and early 80s.
Go disco.
Why not go disco, but just become more relevant to that era.
Right.
And we had the material. We were all listening to, you know, Steely Dan and Boz Scaggs and a lot of upscale stuff. And we were writing in that vein, and we actually had to write down to meet, so Dion would understand it. You know, at the time, Dion was a 1-4-5 guy. It was C, F, and G.
Right.
And we had to write down to his level, and we were doing all these old standbys, and people were actually calling us an oldies act, instead of what we had been promised to be was a relevant act of the times, an early 80s act. And we finished the job in Charleston, West Virginia, and I remember walking to the airport to catch the plane home, and Dion saying, I can't do this anymore, I don't have the energy for it. Meanwhile, through those dates that we did in the Midwest, we actually got offered the opening act for Springsteen and for Van Morrison. We were going to be their opening act to travel to Europe and Japan,
Yeah.
Australia. Dion said, I can't do this anymore, and that's when he found his religion. He went from a rocker, which to this day he disdains his period of time through that, to be demeaning to him, because he found his spirituality, which I get, I understand that.
Right.
And that he wanted to go into more of the gospel thing, which he did in the 80s. He was a gospel artist, and did a lot of successful albums on a couple different labels. As a gospel artist, doing secular music, and he was it was good to him, but it was a shock to us because at the time we were being courted by the record label Lifesong, particularly, who had actually, as we were doing the Fire in the Night album at Bayshore Studios with Bill Sismic, we were doing our studio time on the daytime slots, and the Eagles were doing Long Run at night.
Right.
And so we were partying back and forth with all the guys in the Eagles, and which was a great time of my life. I mean, just to be in there, just to hang out with Joe Walsh and trade some guitar parts with him was like I died and go to heaven.
Yeah.
And we were actually courted by the record company to go. They actually did a four-track EP for us as the band without Dion, and they were going to put us out on our own, and we were using Dion as that vehicle. And it almost came to fruition. We got to New York. We did a couple shows in New York. We were recorded by David Letterman and Paul Schaefer. The rumor was at the time that we were being considered for David Letterman's band with Paul Schaefer. And unfortunately, we were all contracted through CBS and Lifesong. Tied up in a knot,
so
and that was a
wouldn't
conflict of
happen.
interest.
Right. And you've been friends for years with Will Lee, who's the bass player.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you know, and so you know that went around, and we were all just up in the air about that. We were walking on cloud 9, and really in hopes of finally breaking the Smaltimore mindset and going to that next level.
Right.
And we were being treated royally,
Okay.
and then it all fell through.
Yeah, right. What happened?
Well, Dion said, I remember this like it was yesterday. We were sitting in the dressing room in East Grand Forks, North Dakota. We had just come back from seeing the Northern Lights in a cornfield. and we were sitting in the dressing room getting ready for the show. And Dion was sitting there under the neon lights putting on his makeup. And he said to me, I'm being drained by this. He says, I'm diseased. And he said, not diseased as in disease, in dis-ease. Dis-ease.
Okay.
And that was and that stuck with me all these years. He was not happy with where he was, and he was being called to another place in his music career, which was the gospel side. And he felt that the rock side of what he was doing did not fit his spiritual persona.
Okay, so he growed into
He growed
into a different direction.
He did, and that
we're real smart here.
And which was a great calling for him, and we've remained close and friendly through the years, and we talk often, probably on a monthly basis. Well, I'll get a phone call and, hey, Russ.
Well, has he regained his senses then?
He's in another place. He's into, he does a lot. He's turned into an excellent blues guitar player.
Yeah.
He's studied all the masters of that, Howlin' Wolf and all those cats that did that, black New Orleans, guitar playing. All those guys, the guys I can't even think of their names anymore because my mind is mush.
So with the record label, though, I mean, you were being courted and everything. Was this all contingent upon Dion being there? Because you guys, obviously, from the way you describe it, you were like progressing musically into
what had happened,
other areas.
What had happened when we did the Fire in the Night album, which was my swan song. I got to actually put 7 of my songs on that album, on that CD, as with Dion singing the lead vocals, but my music, my lyrics, it was great. When we finished that, and we came back to Baltimore, waiting for the release of it, waiting for the final, produced package. When we got it, we were just floored by what Cashman and West had done to that. They had taken it and just filled it with saccharin. We had string lines and we had backing vocals that were never there, and it was like, oh my God, it's like the.
So it wasn't your vision then?
It wasn't our vision. It wasn't what we had thought it was going to be. And Dion actually got into a huge shouting match with the record label, and Dion's manager, Zach Lickman at the time, got into a huge shouting match about this, and that is when everything started to go downhill because the record company, Lifesong Records, and Cashman and West says, we're not releasing this.
Screw this. We're
going to shelve it.
Right.
We're going to move on because we don't want to carry this baggage. And it wasn't a lot of we were just trying to express our artistic vision of what we thought the album should be, because we were trying to compete with the newcomers in the 80s, and we wanted it to be on that par. And they kind of dumbed it down, and we were resentful of that, not realizing that we needed to step back from that in order to
and
get that third album.
These stories really set the stage for what has ultimately became the demise of the popularity of the record labels, and with the at the same time the proliferation of the internet coming around, and people kind of just flocking to be online in a global community, discovered that you could do music that. And then what has grown out of that, and we've discussed it many times, and it is really the crux of this show, this program, it's the indie model was born, where people can make their own. I mean, we were talking last night, everybody and their brother can have a recording studio now.
Yes.
And everybody can
I have
be
one myself.
Yeah, well, right.
We all have
too.
them. Yes.
Yeah, right
we
here.
All have them. Yes.
But the point is, I mean, you're not tied to like getting your song on WCAO.
Well, you take all
which
them
only
people.
covers this small area. Right now, you're instantly global.
Right.